Hello, beautiful women. Today I had an amazing conversation with a woman in her who had her child in her early 40s, and it was going to be my first interview on this podcast, but she didn't actually realize that we were recording and she felt uncomfortable sharing such intimate details about herself publicly. However, she did give me permission to share her story, and I want to share it with you while it's still fresh in my mind so I can retain some of the great information she gave. This woman is an extraordinary person. She worked in human rights for many years, met her partner in this really interesting way. She basically went out with a group of girlfriends, and one of them suggested this idea that they should all try to make eye contact and stare at one guy that they thought was cute in the bar. And if you're like me and they were like me, you probably would be really afraid of rejection doing such a thing. But it was effective for them. So basically, she chose this guy who was essentially so shy, he was staring at a wall and just stared at him and stared at him until he turned around finally and realized, okay, I'm staring at a wall. There's no one else she could be looking at. And came over and started talking to her. They had a wonderful time. And then they became boyfriend and girlfriend for many years. And she said she really never wanted to have children or get married, but suddenly when she turned 34, she just was overcome with this incredible desire to have a baby. And she talked to her partner, and he was not at all interested in having children. And they kind of broke up, got back together, broke up, got back together. And so she decided that she was going to have a baby no matter what. So this part starts to get a bit raunchy. So if you don't want to hear about it, tune out now. So essentially, she started doing everything in her possibility to have children. She had unprotected sex. I told her I was kind of surprised that men would be willing to ejaculate knowing that she wanted a baby, and they didn't, but apparently that happened a lot in that time period. And she also, on the other side, started going to a holistic fertility counselor and basically started preparing her body to have a baby. This fertility counselor told her that she had to stop doing sports and going to the gym because adrenaline would interfere with her having a baby. And basically, she started eliminating a lot of things in her life that were getting her energy up and just became a really, really calm person. And at the same time, she hired a design consultant to fix her room, and she discovered that there were a lot of pictures of single women in her room. And so she decided to make her whole apartment more man friendly, so to speak. So this was happening at the same time. And then meanwhile, she was just really, really focusing on having a baby. She also started doing vision boarding. I told her that I kind of find vision boarding a bit challenging. I was actually building a vision board with some friends the other day, and it's just so hard for me to know what to pick. Sometimes I feel like the criteria I have for finding a husband and children are kind of superficial, or I just don't know what's important. I grew up with a single mom myself, and so it's hard for me to even really discern what qualities are important. I mean, I know I want someone kind and committed and hopefully intelligent that I can have fun with. Don't want him to do drugs or be an addict of any sort or a cheater or a liar, but it's just really hard for me to get specific on that point. So the advice she gave me was advice she learned, which is that when you make a vision board, just grab a couple magazines and you should just flip through until you find an image that your eye alights upon. You don't have to say why or is this what I want, but just rip it out and glue it on the board. She said that she had lots of pictures of canoes and paddling, and it turns out now her life is full of nature. So I'm going to try that. I'm going to just grab a bunch of magazines. My friend has been telling me to stop doing my vision boards digitally and to give the magazines a try. So I'm going to try that strategy. So basically, she was doing all of this stuff to bring in a baby, and her partner, who she was on and off again, very oddly had a change. And this story is so crazy because I feel like if you were talking to a dating coach and you imagine the scenario happening, the dating coach would say your expectations are just so off. You need to get down to earth, girl. But basically, she went out to a concert with her partner at the time, and she overheard him talking to someone across the table saying, "That's cool, you have a child. I want a child." And he never had said that to her before. And so I have this theory that maybe by preparing her body for motherhood, she started to attract the energy of a man who wanted to make a child with her. I don't know. I mean, it seems like that makes sense if you know, sex is there to make babies. So if you start preparing your body to have a baby, maybe you're going to attract the kind of men who want to have a baby, or maybe a man is going to be attracted to the idea of having a baby with you. So that was pretty wild. The other thing she did, which, I mean, this totally blew my mind, because I can imagine if my friend told me this, I would say, oh my gosh, girl, this is the worst idea ever. Do not do this. But as she was on and off with him, basically they were broken up, and he was looking for a place to stay, and she invited him to live with her. So she was trying to have a baby, living with her on and off again ex, and within 3 months of seeing this holistic fertility counselor, breaking up, getting back together with this guy, and sleeping with random men in the hopes of getting pregnant, she got pregnant with her long-term boyfriend and has this beautiful child. And it's just, I mean, it was just so wild for me to hear her story. So her advice to me was have the baby. And, I mean, I think that seems like obvious advice to a lot of people. It's not the first time that someone has said to me, you should just go get IVF with a sperm donor. But, a part of me really wants that fairy tale ending, and as unreasonable as it might seem. But what my new friend also suggested is that perhaps even having a child would be a good way to meet someone, and that there are lots of hot single dads on the playground that you can connect with. The other surprising thing she told me is just that when you do have a child, your entire network opens up. So two of her best friends are also women who had children when they were 43. And she said when she had a child, she just started meeting all these neighbors she never knew before, because they would come over and they would want to help with the baby, or they just loved the cute kid. So that was, very eye-opening for me. She also talked about how you can adopt a baby. Of course, there's so many children who need homes, and that you don't have to have a partner to have a baby, and you don't have to have the partner first and then the baby. I'm not quite ready to just drop everything and do that. I still know that what I want is to create a family with a loving partner and have children, but I'm very well aware that the other path might open itself up to me. And it does seem reasonable that preparing my body to have children makes a lot of sense. It makes sense in terms of me being attracted to the kind of people who would be conducive to me having a child. It makes sense in terms of attracting people who want to have children right now. And I think it just makes sense, if I do want to have children soon, that I prepare my body to do that. She also said that she had talked to a woman who had a matchmaker introduce her to a match. The matchmaker introduced her to one other woman, to 3 men. None of them were a fit, and then the matchmaker decided to introduce her to a 4th one, and there you go. On the flip side of that, she said that another woman she knows went to a matchmaker, and the matchmaker wouldn't see her because she was so determined to have a baby at age 43 that the matchmaker just didn't feel like she could match her with someone at all. And so, I mean, my big takeaway from this is there are all kinds of women who have babies at age 43. This woman I talked to said her doctor still says she can have a baby at age 50. And that there are people who tried unsuccessfully with IVF and successfully with IVF. There was a woman who had done it 5 times. And then there are people who just got pregnant. At one point, she said, "Why don't you go to Sweden and try to get pregnant there?" So apparently, one woman did that, and then she brought her son to meet his half brothers and sisters in Sweden. She also told me that when she decided to have a baby, a couple old boyfriends stepped up and said that they would help her out. So, you know, I've never been in a situation where a man just did, just met, felt like, hey, let's go have a baby. I don't care. Let's enjoy this moment. But apparently that happened for her. I don't necessarily think that's the best approach either. Would rather go for the higher quality sperm in the sperm bank. But there you go. She said, go for the baby and go for true love. But this is a time frame we're dealing with. Get pregnant immediately now. Anyway, I'm just really grateful that I had this conversation with my new friend, and maybe I've planted a seed in your mind. Also, if you are thinking about going the route of IVF and a sperm donor, I actually found a place that does IVF in Greece, two places, Serum IVF and New Life IVF. They have really high success rates. It's only 2,500 euros or 3,000 euros. You might also have to get some procedures if you're older. There's like a hysteroscopy, which I think costs between about 1,000 euros to get out if you have extra polyps, and then the medication also costs about 500 to 1,000 euros. But you don't necessarily need to feel money constrained if you want to go that route. I really enjoyed my conversation with Barbara. I'll be thinking about her advice, and I hope that this was helpful to you in some way.